Hello everybody and welcome to a new tutorial. In today's tutorial we are going to be covering these lovely Niagara tentacles. Now in this video we are going to be covering how to create the textures, the materials and the emitter for these things. This is based on something that I'd originally seen on Twitter, but I believe that CG How, another YouTuber, has also done a version of these, but they're for a very specific use case that I'm not a fan of. So I'm going to show you guys how to make these and set them up to use them however you want. So you can see here we've got a few different behaviors going on. You should be able to plug in any behavior that you want with these things, and they'll do what you want. I'm going to put some timestamps in the description so that you can skip over making the textures if you don't have access to Photoshop. These are very easy textures to create, but if you don't have that, then the textures are going to be available for download in the description. So just go ahead and grab them and then use the timestamps to skip ahead if you need to, or if you want to see how they're made, then stick around. So first thing, we're going to make the textures. Woo! And now you might be able to see here, we've got like this weird kind of like cellular stuff going on in there. And that's exactly what this is. This is just some cells. So we're going to open up one of my favorite websites. If we open up Chrome, which is mebiusbox.github.io. And this is a effect texture maker. And this lets us make lots of different textures for lots of different things, but I use it for quite a few VFX. So we are currently on type wood, you can see here, and we're just going to open this up and we're going to go down to cell. And we're going to select cells, and now you can see we've got these lovely cells. I'm just going to change the resolution up to 1024 because we want a little bit more in there. Now this is really quite large. We don't really need this many cells, so we're going to right click on the parameters to open up the different parameters here, and we have intensity, power exponent and size. First thing we'll do is we'll just lower the intensity down, just get rid of some of the white, maybe to about 0.5-ish, and we'll up the exponent ever so slightly, just a little bit, because we want quite a lot of dark in there. There we are, maybe 2.4. And the size, we're just going to ramp this up until we get some nice big cells. About 2.4, 2.5-ish, around there. Just get what you feel looks nice. This may tile, it might not quite tile, but what we can do, luckily, over on the right-hand side, is we can click this little tiling tab and press enable, and then that will repeat this pattern for us so that we can make sure that this does tile. Now we're going to press Save Image, and this will open it in its own tab. We can right-click Save Image As, and then we can just find the correct folder. Bring this over, so in my Unreal Projects, Tutorials, Content, Tutorials, Tentacles, and I'm going to save this here, and I'm going to call this T_cells. And I'm just going to put an O1 at the end, just in case, because I don't want to copy the same name that I had earlier. I can find this easily. So now we have our cells O1 texture, and that's now in the engine. For the second texture, we're just going to be using some simple clouds to distort the UVs. So you can see here as these are moving up, you can see that they're not just a cellular texture moving straight upwards or around, they are being wibbled. And we're using a cloud texture just to offset the UVs. So in Photoshop, we're just going to open up a brand new 1024 by 1024 by 1024. There we are. Get my teeth in. And then we're going to go to Filter, Render, Clouds. And that's just going to give us some nice clouds. And we can use this. This is fine. Save as a copy. Save on computer. And I need to find the right folder again. Unreal Projects. Content. Now, if you make sure this is somewhere inside of your content folder, the engine should pick up the fact that it's in here. And we're going to call this T_clouds. I'm going to call this O3 because I already have 2 in the project somewhere. I'm going to change this just to a targa, and I'm going to press save and OK on 24 bits per pixel. Go back to the engine, and you can see here it's recognized that we have 2 new files to come in. We're going to press import. There we are. And we'll exit full screen. And now you can see I have my cells and my clouds. Now I'm ready to make the material, but first let's just get rid of all these tentacles because they are distracting and wibbly. There we go, they're gone. So, material time. We're going to right click, we're going to select material, M_tentacles. Again, I'm just going to put O1 at the end because I already have a file called tentacles and I don't want this to get confusing. We'll double click to open this up. Go away, old tentacles, we don't want you. And we'll grab our 2 textures and we will just drag these into the material editor. Now this open, we are going to want the clouds first because we're going to want to add something here to the UVs of our cells to warp them and make them offset. To do this without it looking too obvious, what we're going to do is we're going to hold P and left click to get a panner node, and we're going to plug this directly into the UVs of the clouds texture. And with the panner selected, we're just going to give this a very low value, so we're going to say 0.02 in both the X and the Y, just to make these move around. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to want to be able to control how much distortion is happening. We're going to be using a material instance later, so we can control this in real time without having to keep recompiling our materials. So we'll hold M and left click for a multiply, plug the red channel, because we just want one channel, we don't want RGB, because we just need two values here. And we can use just a singular value, which will append into 2. We can't append 3 into 2, because it doesn't know what to get rid of. So we've got our multiply, plug the red channel in, and we're going to hold S on the keyboard and left click for a scalar parameter, and we're going to call this our UV distortion. And we'll plug this into the B, and for now I'm just going to set this to 0. I'm just going to leave it as 0. In fact, no, I'm not. I'm going to set this to 0.5 so that we can see it in just a moment. So 0.5. Next, we're going to hold U and left click for a texture coordinate, and this is essentially just our UVs, which is just at one tiling of each U and V. And to distort these UVs, we need to add this little guy to our UV. So hold A and left click for an add, plug the texture coordinate into the A and the multiply into the B. And now we also want to make these cells move on their own. So we're going to need another panner, P, left click, add into the coordinate, plug this into the UVs. The panner, we're just going to give this a 0.7 in both the X and the Y, like so. And now if we were to go ahead and preview this node, you can see here now we're getting this nice wibbly effect on our sphere. And if we go ahead over to our UV distortion and we set this back down to 0, it will stop that distortion, and now we just get the cells moving around quite quickly. This is why we add this to our UVs, is to give us that nice distortion. So we're just going to leave that at 0 for now, because we're going to mess with that inside of a material instance. So we are going to stop previewing, because we don't want to see that anymore. And what we will do next is we want to make sure that we can get this as our color value inside of our particle system. So we are going to plug this into emissive color, but first we're going to want a color itself. So we're going to hold V and left click for a vector parameter, and we're just going to call this our color, which we don't really need to do because we're going to be using a hue shift in a moment, and we can give this any color we want. I'm going to just default to green because it's my favorite color and I'm basic. We're going to actually put the value here to 5, and what this does is it puts our color above a 1. So white is 111. Anything above a value of 1 will have an emissive value. So by adding the value to 5 here, we have 5 in the green channel, and this is going to give us a glowing green. If we hold M and left click for a multiply, and we multiply our color by our cells, if we then preview and multiply, you can see now we have a nice green cells. Yay, cool. However, we're going to want to change this later, but I'll show you how to set that up later, because we don't want to dive too deep into those things before we know what we're doing with our actual Niagara system. So for now, we're just going to go ahead and plug this into our emissive color, and now we actually have this on our texture. But we also want to be able to control the base color. So this is just going to be our glow. We want to be able to control our base color inside of the emitter. So we're going to right click, particle color, and we're going to plug this directly into base color, like so. And you can see we have our glow on top of the white. Anything that's black in here isn't going to glow, so we're going to get the base color underneath that. The base color by default for particle color is white, which is why we've got white with this very, very subtle green. So we have our basic material now, so we're just going to apply this and save so we don't lose it in case the engine crashes. We're just going to minimize this down. Now what we'll do is we're just going to right click our tentacles and create a material instance, and we'll leave it named what it is currently, which is m_tentacles_01_instance. What a mouthful. Next, we're going to start setting up the actual Niagara system. So we're going to right click, effects, going to head to Niagara system. We'll press next, and we'll use a fountain, next, finish, ns_tentacles. Again, I'm just going to add the 01 for my own reference, and we'll open this guy up. Now then, we are currently using a sprite renderer, but we don't want a sprite renderer. We want a ribbon renderer. Ribbons previously have been single planes, which are then stretched based on their movements, and then more planes are added to it, so each particle is its own little plane, and they're all put together into one long ribbon. In 4.27 and 5 early access, we've been able to change the shape of the ribbons, which is actually really cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the sprite renderer and just delete it. Bye-bye, no more sprites. And we're going to select a ribbon renderer on the render. Now you can see we've got this really weird spaghetti going on. It's because we still have the defaults from the fountain, but we don't really mind that right now. We're just going to shrink this down, and we're just going to drop this system into the world so we can see this in our world, like so. And we'll head back to our Niagara system. Now, the air freshener again. What we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the sphere location, don't need it. Get rid of velocity and cone, don't need it. Gravity force, don't need it. Drag, don't need it. Scale color, we don't need it. Now you can see our ribbons are gone. The ribbons are gone because they are not getting any data to show them anything. So we need to add some velocity. So we'll add velocity, and we're just going to make these go straight up. So 200 in the Z. Whee! And now you can see we've just got this nice long ribbon here. But if we look at it in our world, like so, you can see that this is just a flat plane that is rotating around with our camera. You can see that really obviously in the ground there, it's just rotating with our camera. So what we want to do is we want to click our ribbon renderer, and we're going to scroll on down to ribbon shape, and we're going to change the shape from plane to tube. Now by default, this is only going to give us a 3 subdivision. So it's going to give us essentially a triangle. We can get the angle just about right. You can just about see there's a triangle there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to increase that subdivision number. Highlight that for you. There it is, tube subdivisions. Now we're going to put this up to 10. Obviously, the higher this goes, the more expensive it's going to be to render. So don't go too crazy. You can probably get away with 8. I'm just using 10 to look a little bit fancier. The next thing that we're going to do is we don't need the initialized particle. We're actually going to change that out. So click on the plus next to particle spawn, and we're going to have an initialize ribbon. There we are. I've selected particle again. Initialize a ribbon. Dean is drunk. There we go. So now we have our initialized ribbon. So you can see now we've got some nice width on this. So we're getting a bit more thickness. It's no longer just that little plane. We can actually see it. Yay, cool. So the next thing that we're going to do, we're just going to leave these as they are for now. We don't really want to mess with these. Is we're going to put in our material instance. So select our ribbon renderer, very bottom. And then we're going to find our material instance, and we're going to drag that into material for the ribbon render. And that's going to put our material onto the ribbon render. So now you can see that we have our glow, and it's on top of the white. We don't really want to see the white. We want to put this to a darker color. So in our initialize ribbon, under color mode direct set, change the color to just something very dark. I'm just going to put black, just pure black. And the ribbon width, we are going to change the ribbon width from 5 up to like 20. We want this to be quite a chunky boy. And now what we can see here is that our panner is actually backwards and it's going downwards. So we're going to head back into our material. It's already open. And we're just going to invert this panner here, the one going into our cells texture. So we're actually going to put a negative at each of these values like so. And when we press apply, we should see now that our cells are moving upwards, which is exactly what we want. Now I hear what you're saying. This looks like a toilet paper roll. It doesn't look like a tentacle yet. That's because we need to scale this. So back inside our system here, we're just going to head to our particle update, press the plus, and then we're going to put scale ribbon width. And what this allows us to do is to control how thick our ribbon's width will be over its life. And under the ribbon scale width here, we're going to press this little arrow key here. On 5 early access, this arrow key is a little chain. It looks like a little chain. Click that instead. And then what we can do is we're just going to find a curve, float from curve, and now you can see we're getting this point on it because the curve has automatically gone from 1 at a time of 0 to 0 at a time of 1. So when it dies, it's going to be not visible. It's going to be very, very small. When it's alive, it's its default value when it first spawns. This is too linear. We're getting just a perfect cone. We don't want this. So what we're going to do is we're just going to select both of the keys, right click, and we're just going to press user rather. And now you can see we're getting almost like a teardrop. So we're getting the inverse of what we want. We want it to stay thicker for longer. So we're going to grab the little handle at the final point here, and we're just going to drag this up to make this much steeper curve. And now you can see we're getting a nice chunky tentacle shape. More, it looks a little bit like a bullet, I suppose, kind of bullet shaped. That's what we're aiming for. So now that we have that, we want it to wiggle. We need the wiggle. So for the wiggle in particle update, we're going to press the plus, and we're going to get a curl noise force, and we're going to get an error here. We're just going to press fix issue. This is going to make sure that the curl noise force is above the solve forces and velocity, because it has to happen before the solve. In the noise strength, we're going to update that to about 100. We want that to be quite high, and you can see we're getting some weird wiggle. And the noise frequency, we're going to lower that down. We don't want it to happen quite as often. Now you can see it's kind of just curved off to the side. It's kind of limped a little bit. So what we're going to do here is we're actually just going to pan the noise field. And by panning the noise field, we'll put 1 in all values. It's going to move the noise field around. So you can imagine the noise field is a 3D texture, and it's just going to move that like a panner, and that's going to determine which way this thing is moving. So now we've got some wiggling. Yes, we have a wiggly boy. So now he's shaking around. He's looking tentacly, right? We're going to just add a few more things here. So obviously we're using our material instance, so we're just going to open this up. And you can see here we're not getting any distortion. We're going to turn on the UV distortion in this guy. And we're just going to increase this ever so slightly. So maybe 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. We just want that really subtle wibbling in the texture there, just to make it look a little bit more liquidy. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make this a little bit less smooth. This is quite a smooth tentacle. We don't quite want it to be that smooth. We want to add some jags in there. You don't have to add the jaggedness in there, but it's quite a cool thing to have. So we're going to head back to our tentacle. And what we need to do here is we need to use our world position offset. So we only need to use our texture sample here. We'll keep all of this here because we want the distortion to move along with it for the world position offset. We're going to take our RGB from the texture sample, and we're going to multiply this by a scalar parameter, which is going to be how much we distort. So hold M and left click for a multiply, hold S and left click for a scalar parameter, and this is going to be a WPO, or world position offset. We'll plug that into the B, plug the texture into the M, or the A rather. I'm thinking about the multiply. And then we're going to hold M for another multiply and left click, plug the previous multiply into the B, and now we want a vertex normal world space, which will plug into the A, and then we will plug these into the world position offset. And what this is going to do is it's going to take the values from our texture, because any color value is just a number. It's going to multiply that by our world position offset, and then it's going to take the vertex normal world space. It's going to look at which way a vertex is looking in the world, and it's going to just multiply that and push it forward in the direction that it's looking. Cool, so we have that. We're going to apply, nothing's going to change because our world position offset is 0, but if we head into our tentacles instance and turn on our WPO, click. As we ramp this up, you'll see that our tentacle should start to get a little bit spiky. There we are. You can see now he's getting wibbly. Cool. So now he's got that all wiggliness at the sides. One thing that this is going to do is it's going to break the top of our tentacle. So if we just hold Control and R to turn off real time, you can see here now the top of our tentacle is wide open. Oh no, it's not really what we want. So what we're going to do is we're just going to change this ever so slightly by using dynamic material parameters. So we're going to head back into our tentacles material. And before we multiply by the world normal, the vertex normal world space, but after we do the world position offset, we need to add in something inside of the Niagara system for us to control this. So to do this, we're going to right click and we're going to get a dynamic parameter. And we're also going to use this for the colors. So we'll set both of these up now. So with the colors, we're going to be using a hue shift, as I mentioned earlier. So we'll drag out from the color and get hue shift. And we want the color to go into the texture V3. And we want the result to go into the multiply for the color previously. And for the dynamic parameter, we'll take param1 and put that into the hue shift percentage. And we're just going to name this our hue shift. Like so, I want capitals, thank you. I'm really particular. Hue shift. And the second one, we're going to call this our WPO. Now we're going to hold M and left click for a multiply. We're going to plug the multiply from the WPO into this new multiply. We'll take the WPO from the dynamic parameter, is the second parameter down, the green, plug that into the new multiply, and then plug that into the multiply with the vertex normal world space. And what this will allow us to do is we can use this inside of our Niagara system to put new numbers in here to control this. So if we apply this real fast and we head to our lovely tentacle system, under particle update, we're going to click the little plus and we're going to say dynamic material parameters. And you can see, because we have our material already plugged in, it's plugged these in for us. And you can see all of our wibbliness has gone away. We have no more jagged edges. That's because the WPO is automatically set to 0. We're just going to select the little drop down for the WPO, and we're going to select float from curve. And the 1 to 0 here is fine. So what we can see here is it's kind of jagged at the bottom and a bit more rugged at the bottom, but then as it gets towards the top, it smooths out, and then it's got a perfect pinch at the top, so we have that nice point back, while still keeping some of our nice wiggly bits down the bottom on the surface. For the hue shift, we are not going to put the hue shift directly in here, so if I was to go ahead and say we want this to be a random range float, what this is going to do is it's going to give us a different value for each piece of the ribbon, because as I say, the ribbons are made up of lots of particles that are all sewn together. It's going to give us a value for each of these. So what we need to do is we need to control this, not on a particle level, but on an emitter level. And this is where these modules really come into play, and their domains. So you can see here, inside of our Niagara system, on the left-hand side, we have these parameters, and each of them is separated into different domains. We have our user, our system, our emitter, and our particles. Now, we know we don't want it to happen on a particle level because we'll get this rainbow. We want it to happen on the emitter level. So on the emitter attributes, we're going to add, and we know it's a float, so we'll search for float. We'll press enter, and we're going to call this our hue shift. And now we want this to happen at the very beginning of the emitter's life. We're going to drag the hue shift into emitter update and drop it right under our spawn rate. And now we can set our hue shift here to our ranged float. And we want 0 to 1 on spawn only. This is because the 0 to 1 represents a 0 to 100 percentage. And now, under our dynamic material parameters, we're just going to empty that back out again. So our hue shift is 0, and we can drag our emitter hue shift into there and drop it down. And now you should see we have a different color particle. Now, this is going to change the tentacle every time the loop is completed. So if we were to see this in the world, it should be changing as well. There we go, it's switching every time the loop is reset. So what we want to do is we just want to select our emitter here, and our life cycle mode and loop behavior, we want to have singular loop, and our loop duration mode, we want this to be infinite. And now it will just have a singular color that won't change unless we restart the sim. Yay, pretty cool. And now this will occur for every single tentacle because it's a random value. Every emitter that we pull out, we'll get a different result, like so. Nifty. And we can go a little bit further with that. Some of these we are going to want to control how thick they are, maybe. We want to control how much of a wave they have. We want to control how high they can be. So we want to add some user parameters here. So what we're going to do is, under our user exposed on the left here, we're going to press a tick and we'll say float. And the first one we'll do life. And we'll do it again, float. We'll do width. Ooh, yep, that's spelled right. And then we want a vector, in fact, and this is going to be our noise force. And now these are our user exposeds. These will appear in this little blue guy here. You can see these are now system user parameters. We have life, noise force, and width. And if we were to go ahead and select our emitter in the level here, you can see that we have them override parameters, our life, our width, and our noise force. These won't do anything at the moment because they're not actually plugged in. So what we're going to do is we're going to head to our initialized ribbon, which is where our life lives. We're just going to drag life in there. Boop. And it's where our width lives. We'll drag our width in there. Boop. And our curl noise force, it's where our pan noise field will live. So we'll put our noise force in there. Boop. And that's broke. That's broke. And that's because inside of this blue ns_tentacles, it's all empty. So we can set our life to a default value. So we'll say 1, 0.2, 0.2, 0.2 maybe, and a width of 20. There we are. Now that's not a very wiggly one because that's quite a chunky boy. So we'll put those all to 1 to get back our previous defaults. We'll press compile. We'll press save. We'll minimize this guy down. And now we can change each one individually. So we've got this one on the right-hand side here selected. We can say life 3 maybe. And now he's going to be a much taller tentacle. But because he's much taller and he's going a much further distance, you can see here that his UVs are broken. So what we can do is we can open up the tentacle system, head to the ribbon renderer, and under the UV settings, UV mode, we want to change from non-uniform to tiled by segment length. We'll press compile, minimize this down, and now his UVs are fixed. Woo! Nice. But you can see he's a little bit of a wavy guy. It's because of how much of him is going through a noise force. It just keeps going. So we're actually going to just slow down how quickly the noise force pans along him. We put 0.2 in all of them. There we are. He'll be a bit of a less wavy boy now, and a little bit slightly wiggly. So the one last thing that is missing from the example is the Fresnel. So we're going to right click in the material, Fresnel. And before we do our colors, we're just going to hold A and left click for an add, plug the textures into the add, take the Fresnel, plug that into the B on the add, then plug that into the multiply for the hue shift. And this is going to give us a glow on the outside. So if we were to press apply now and minimize this down, you can see we've got a glow, but it's also affecting the insides of this very, very badly. These are quite bright now. So what we're going to do is on our Fresnel, we're just going to right click the exponent in particularly, and we can actually promote that to a parameter. And we can do the same for the base reflect, promote to parameter. The normal doesn't matter, we can leave that one be. The default for the exponent is 5. We're just going to set the defaults, and the parameter for the base reflect is 0.4. No, 0.04. We'll apply that, and then if we go to our instance here, we have access to these guys now, and we can just ramp these down. So let's say we don't want that. We want the edging to be a little bit thinner, so we'll increase the exponent, and we don't want the inside to be quite as bright. We can lower the base reflect rather, and we can do something like this. There we go. To get closer to what we had at the beginning, we can increase our like jiggles a bit more, and there we are. We have tentacles. Yay! Wiggle, wiggle. And that's it. Now you can drag your tentacles out and do whatever you want. Obviously, if you don't want them to have a random color, remove the hue shift and just set the color directly. I'll show you how to do that real quick. So we'll remove the hue shift here. We will just plug the color directly into the multiply for the color, apply, and now they'll all be green again. And then if we go to our instance, we can turn on our color variable, and we can just whack them to whatever color we like. Maybe they're red, maybe they're blue, maybe they're a hot pink. Let's go with hot pink. That feels good. So there we go. Tentacles. As I say, this will work in both 4.27 and 5. It won't work any earlier than 4.27. Sorry about that, but they didn't have the tube option before then. There we go. Tentacles. Obviously, if you just want to download these files, they are available directly on my Patreon. You'll find the link in the description below. If you want to follow me on Twitter, the link is also down there, and so is my Discord. If you found today useful, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, but it goes a long way to make sure that my channel is getting noticed and that we can keep helping people in their UE4 and UE5 adventures. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.